Alright, welcome to a special edition of JMC Live. Today we're going to have the wonderful, illustrious, very well spoken professor from my University of Ohio, Richard Kowieski. He is the assistant professor of communication, and we're going to today talk about his life growing up. He's originally from Poland. His family is from Poland, so has family overseas all across the world. Has several friends that are very interested in hearing his story, his life growing up, and how things are very well connected to current day society. So with no more further introduction, we will go to Professor.
I would just like to say that it's a great honor and a very nice opportunity for me to speak, and I thank you very much. My parents came to the United States of America with that last great wave of immigrants after a major disaster. In this case, it was World War II. And immigrants, of course, are always still coming to America. We are still the beacon of light. Not too many people want to leave this country, as you know. And we passed on an ocean freighter the Statue of Liberty, just like you see in some of those older movies, past Ellis Island, and that's where we unboarded the ship. We stayed in New Jersey for a while, and we made our way to upstate New York on a farm where I was born on September 2nd, 1950. And then we ended up a few months later in Detroit, Michigan. My mother's mother, which is my grandmother, and her father, my grandfather, were the only ones who came over with their children, including my mother. My father, who was married to my mother, was the only one from his family to come over. And we grew up on the east side of Detroit, what I call the Polish ghetto. My first language was Polish, and that's what we spoke at home. And that's what I spoke the first time I walked into St. Luke's, a Catholic school in Detroit, and then I had to quickly learn English. Just to back up here for a moment, I have a younger brother, 7 years younger than me. His name is Danny, and he also went to St. Luke's. As you know, with the last name like Kowieski, most Polish people are Catholic, and we were no exception. And even though my parents just barely got through 9th grade when Adolf Hitler and World War II interrupted their education, they always stressed to my brother and I to get as much education as you can. The famous words that still ring in my ear today are that an education is something that will never be taken away from you. Now, some places may try, of course, but essentially an education meaning what you have learned can never be taken from you. And so I grew up basically bilingual, as many millions of immigrants children did, nothing unusual. I had one foot in America when I left the house, and then when I came home I had one foot in Little Poland. I remember some memories of growing up the way that I did, bilingual, is my parents to this day, when they speak English, speak through the Polish language first, and they still have an accent. I remember my friends coming over to my house and saying, "Boy, you know, your parents have an accent." And of course, you know, if you grow up in that household, you don't hear it the way somebody else hears it for the first time. And to this day, still, even though they have picked up English, I think, reasonably well, when I go to visit them, we still speak Polish. And when I was younger, sometimes the phone would ring, and I would answer it, or my mother would answer it, and then call me, and I would find out who was on the other end, what they wanted, and I would give that message to my mother in Polish. She would answer or respond to me in Polish, and then I would talk back in English to whoever it was that had called. Sometimes when we would go to the grocery store, picking up a can of Campbell's chicken and noodle. If there wasn't a picture of the chicken and noodle or cream of mushroom soup, my mother would hold the can up and say, "What is this soup?" And I would say, "Well, it's chicken and noodle or green peppers or whatever." So it was a little different. I probably, we didn't have much in terms of money, and also not much in terms of clothing. My mother probably, the way she dressed me in hand-me-downs, I probably looked like a little Polish sausage, and a lot of people laughed at me, coming down the tubes at school. But it was something that my mother and father said they will laugh at you, they will continue to laugh at you, so get used to it, and it's never going to change. And they probably don't laugh at me as much anymore, but it was kind of unique and different growing up that way. Of course, growing up immigrant stock, my father was the original Archie Bunker. You did it his way, or it was not done. He was very dogmatic, very opinionated in his opinions, and that carries over to me. Still to this day, I would say that one of my strengths as a human being is what the Catholic education gave me, which is a very strong sense of organization and discipline. But on the other hand, growing up the way that I did, a weakness is that I was very quick to judge people, evaluate them, put them into categories, stereotypes, if you will, and still am, but not as bad as I once was. And also, as a youngster, I got into a lot of fights, so I probably still have a short temper, but not as bad as I used to, although I have currently 5 dogs. If they were here, and if they could only speak, I'm sure they could tell you more instances of that short temper. But anyway, I was at St. Luke's in Detroit growing up. I graduated from grade school, the 8th grade, in 1964. Went to an all-boys Catholic high school, Detroit Cathedral, in downtown Detroit, in 1964 to 1968. Then I went to Eastern Michigan University for 4 years, graduated from there in 1972. Went to Bowling Green State University in Bowling Green, Ohio for 1 year to get the master's, and that was 1972 to 1973. And then I went to OU to get the PhD from 1973 to 1977. And all 3 degrees were in the field of speech communication, as it was called then. And then, as you know, the whole point of getting an education is to seek gainful employment. There was a job opening here at Ohio University in Chillicothe, Ohio. I applied. Other people applied. We were all interviewed, and fortunately I was selected. And you wake up one morning, and by George, it's 30 years later, and you're still there at Ohio University at Chillicothe. So just as a brief synopsis, this is how my story has evolved.
All right, we will take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Professor and talking more about his life growing up and where he's at the university. We'll be right back.